Hey everybody, welcome back to another, I guess this isn't technically a Timer Tip Tuesday, but it is on Tuesday. We are going to be talking today about the RaceDay check-in, some of the new updates that have been added recently, and also just an overview of the different features and why you might want to use it for your events. Just a little bit about myself, if you don't know who I am, my name is Matt Avery. I'm the product manager for RaceDay at RunSignup. And so I've been in the timing industry for about 11 years and 7 years with RunSignup. So I specialize in helping design features to make race day easier for events directors and timers. So I'm the one who basically takes all the great ideas that customers bring to us and figure out how we could develop them, and then work with our development team to get them prioritized and done in a way that satisfies our customers. So if you have any great ideas, feel free to shoot them my way. We may have thought of them already, but we may not have. And if so, we'd love to try and see what we can do to make your lives a little bit easier. I also have Chris McDonald, who's our race day expert on the back end here today. So he is going to be managing the questions panel on GoToWebinar. So if you do have any questions as we go through today's session, feel free to ask away, and he'll respond with great responses. We will also be recording this session, so don't worry if you miss anything. We are going to be recording it and posting it to our YouTube channel for you to watch at a later date, or forward to anyone else who may be interested who wasn't able to attend today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And Chris, if anything does come up that's pretty important, feel free to stop me. I'm a little bit more technical, so sometimes I get a little in the weeds on some things. So if something doesn't make sense, feel free to ask.
Will
Okay.
do.
Yep, thanks, Chris. Today, this is the agenda. We're going to be doing just an introduction to the app, enabling the check-in for our race, how to load the race in the app, how to set up presets and configurations, how to check in participants, and any questions you may have. I realize now that that gray text doesn't match. That's okay. The basic points are there. So we're going to give you the overview of what it is and how you can use it for your event. So first, what is it? So it's an app that allows you to quickly look up and edit participant info on the fly. So today we are going to be talking specifically about the mobile app. There is a check-in mode on the RunSignup dashboard, which you can use, but today we're just going to be talking about the mobile apps because it's a completely different feature set, and we don't have all the time in the world to cover both of them. So today, again, just the mobile apps on Android and iOS are what we're talking about. So some major features is you can do really fast bib assignments on site. You can quickly look up other participant info about your participants. It syncs with all of our other products automatically. So if you made a change to, say, someone's event in the check-in app, that would go up to RunSignup, and then that would go back down to any other of our services that you're using, like our scoring system, our results, and everything like that. In addition, it's extremely customizable to suit many different use cases. So we found over the many years that we've had this product, a lot of really creative uses of it. So we have, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So the big question is, why should I change? People are used to, and event directors especially, are used to showing up to packet pickup with a printed out list of participants in the database at midnight on Thursday before the event, and they just want to be able to like cross off the names as they show up, and they want to have all the bibs assigned and labeled beforehand. And that's the traditional method for doing things. But we have some really great reasons why you might want to try out what we call dynamic bib assignment and using the check-in apps instead of using paper. So the biggest problem is that that system doesn't allow registrants to register at the last minute. And participants these days especially want to register at the last minute in their car, on their phone, as they're at the event. They want to make that decision at the very last minute. And you as an event director want to be able to accommodate those participants because you want to get as many registrations as possible, right? So the question you have to ask is, what can I change to get more registrants? And this is one way to do it. Open up that registration period until 5 minutes before the gun goes off, and you're going to get a few more registrations, and this will help you. So here's the old timeline. The registration is open There's no noticeable difference between the two different options. In the old timeline, you'd close registration, say on Wednesday. No one else can register until packet pickup on Friday opens up. At that point, you export your registrants, you sort your spreadsheet by last name, first name, you put your bib numbers in, you import that participant info into your timing software, you send it to your timer, and then you print out your bib labels, and you have someone actually physically label each and every single bib number with all of them, and hopefully you got it right in the right sort order. Otherwise, I'll have to do the whole thing again. Then you got to go and you got to set up packet pickup. You got to print out all the alpha lists, make sure that all the bibs are in the right order. If you have multiple different areas that you're doing packet pickup, you might have some bib range reserved for a different shop or a different location. You have to make sure that you have all the changes and the new registrations. You have paper forms ready to process those changes and new registrations. The registration must close, so you have to make sure that everything is shut down. So the timer has all of the up-to-date entries, and then everything else is manually added as it happens. As participants come up to packet pickup and they fill out their forms, you have to type it in. This is really stressful because on site, if you haven't processed all of your paper entries, or you get a huge influx of registrants at the last minute, you have to process all those manually and type them all in, and it's really stressful, and you have to make sure you get it all in before the first runners come. It's not a lot of fun. So finally, once you get all of the data entered, you hit your moment is in, where everything is in and your results are being pushed up. But there's a lot of stress in step 10 there. So what's the new timeline? The new timeline is you leave registration open until you feel like closing it. Now, at that point, you'll send out an email with a QR code replacement tag. We've got a lot of good videos on how you can use our email platform to do such a thing. Enable the check-in app, and then what you do is you don't even worry about assigning the bib numbers beforehand. You dynamically assign them by QR code as they register, or as they show up on that day, or as they show up to packet pickup in the days in advance. You pull all that data and changes into RaceDay scoring or whatever scoring software that your timer uses, and then you push results out as soon as participants hit a timing point. This is the new flow that we see a lot of timers doing, and the reasons why it's great are as follows. It's really quick and customizable. Basically, you can customize what shows in your check-in app, and I'll talk more about that later, and how it all operates. You can scale across multiple devices. People are commonly concerned about having a single check-in station, and they get a lot of people coming up and people aren't used to using it. Well, it's really easy, because what you can do is you can have your volunteers just download the app, and you can have it ready if a ton of people show up at random. You can really easily load up the app and just start checking people in up the line. Grab a stack of bibs and just start scanning and giving them out. So that makes it really easy to scale up in those moments when you have a lot of volume. It's simple to use for actual volunteers who are setting it up. The process for getting it configured the way you want it to be configured takes a little bit of learning and training, but once you have it set up, it's really easy to give to a volunteer and let them use it. So the dynamic bib assignment features is what I was talking about before, where you are basically giving out bib numbers as participants walk up. This is really, really, really nice because it does reduce your costs. If you're using bibs that are chipped, you are no longer going to have to give out or throw away all of those bibs that were not picked up. It's a lot easier because you don't have to search through all of the pre-assigned bibs in the big boxes, and you know how that can get to be a big mess after you have 1,000 bibs or something like that, and you're picking out ones in the middle of the ranges. They all start to fall over, and it's not a great experience. With dynamic assignment, you can just have a stack of bibs, take the first one on the top, and hand it out, and you're ready to go. Also, we give you a really nice reporting feature on the back end at RunSignup. It allows you to see how your check-in stats are going. So you can see how your total number of check-ins by event. Also lets you see by the hour, like how many check-ins you had for each of your events. And like I said before, it does fully integrate with RunSignup and the scoring software. It's bidirectionally syncing in both directions. So all those bib assignments are automatically being sent to RunSignup. So let's talk a little bit about how we set things up on RaceDay check-in. So like I said, the check-in or the setup process is a little bit involved. So today I was going to spend some time on going through some of the details, especially regarding some of the more recent updates that we've made. So let's get started. Things we're going to talk about in the setup are how do we get things started in RunSignup? How do I make my event available to the check-in app? And then how do I actually set it up in the check-in app? How do I locate the race? How do I create and edit presets and configurations? And we'll talk about what those are. How do I actually hand off to a volunteer and let them check in participants? How would they use the app themselves? And then a few other things at the end about additional features and settings and some useful links. So this is the most important thing, and it's the #1 question we get for new users of the apps. Why don't I see my race when I load up the app and search? Well, you do have to enable your event so that it's made available to the app. And you can do this on the RunSignup dashboard of your race. If you go to menu search, you can just search for RaceDay check-in and you'll find it. Or you can go to RaceDay tools and then RaceDay check-in and select mobile app right here. So on the left, you'll see this authentication settings area, which sounds kind of scary, but it's basically just you have to set up a password in order to allow the data to be made available to any app. So we do have to make this a little bit secure because we are sharing potentially identifiable information. We don't want any of this information getting out to people who shouldn't get their hands on it. So you do have to make sure it's something unique. You're not going to have to hand this out to a ton of people, just your volunteers who are using it for the event. So it's important that you have a secure password here. You can set the password hint on the right to remind yourself what it is, because typically I'll forget the minute I enter a new password what I actually entered. So, and then at the bottom, you have to enable and disable check-in. Now, what this feature does is it just tells the system, I want this race to show up in the list starting at this date and time and not show up in this list ending at this date and time. So it's just saying, okay, within this window, people can search for and load this event on their devices. It doesn't like disable or enable anything on the back end in terms of syncing. All it does is it's saying, at this point, you can search for it and pull it down. After this point, you can no longer search for it and pull it down. But if you had the data on the devices already, it's not going to clear them out or anything like that. So how do I set up the app on my device? Well, you go to the App Store, depending on whether you're in Apple or Android, download the app, click the gear icon in the top right corner once you actually install it. And this lets you do something to basically it allows you to set your device name. This is really nice because it allows you to identify each of the devices. So what we'll typically do is if you have a team of volunteers working at a check-in station, have them all download the app, or if they've used it before, load it up. Have them customize their device options here and change their device name so that you'll know, like, Matt Avery checked in all these people and so on and so forth. Or what you can do is say, let's say I have 2 shops that I'm doing pickup at. I want everyone who is at check-in station 1 to have the same identifier and everyone at check-in station 2 to have a different identifier. So I can see what is my volume at each of my stations like. So I know at shop 1, I need to dedicate more resources to next year versus shop 2. So this is a really interesting way that you can use our analytics on the back end. Okay, next, once you have the race or the app actually on your device and you have your device identifier set or the name of your device set, you want to search for your actual race in the list here. So this will list out all of the races that are currently available for check-in. Just search for the name of your race and then log in. And you'll see on that second screen, we give you a little link to the race dashboard. In case you forgot what your password was for your check-in event, you can click that and it'll bring you right to that page that we were looking at before so that you can figure out what it was or update it if you totally forgot and it's not working. So we give you just a little quick access there. We also do have an ability to use volunteer check-in, which is a completely separate function on RunSignup. And it's typically used for if you have like a really large volunteer team for a big event, and you actually are using a separate version of the app to manage your volunteers themselves. if you need to make sure that all your water stops got everybody showing up and things like that. So we're not going to talk about volunteer check-in today. We're going to focus more on the standard participant check-in. But that feature is available if you use RunSignup Volunteer Platform. Okay, so once you load the race, you'll see all the participants from the race loaded right away. And we predefine a whole bunch of different features and settings and functionality in the app, but you have the ability to customize everything you can think of here. So this is where things start to get a little complicated when you need to learn how to use the app, but it does give you that extreme amount of flexibility so that you can customize it the way you want and then deploy it out to your volunteers so that it's easy for them to use and effective. So once you're in the race, your participants will start syncing. At this time, you can configure your presets and configurations. And you can do this in the top right. There's a little icon, a little gear icon, and this will allow you to access your presets and configurations. So the quick and dirty on presets and configurations are that presets allow me to customize the check-in app for a specific event. Like in this case, I got a test 5K and like a 10K event, let's say. So for each of those events, I want the check-in experience to be different, maybe. I want to say for the 10K, I want to show corral. On the 5K, I don't want to show corral, or something like that. Presets allow me to define those things differently for each of my events. And configurations allow me to decide which events use which preset. So I set up a preset that's like my standard running race preset, and I want my 5K and my 10K to use that. And then I have another one that's like a relay preset that I'm going to use for my 10K relay event or something like that. So configurations basically say, I've got these presets and they're all assigned to these different events. And we'll go through that in a little bit more in depth here. So what kind of preset customizations are possible? So on the right, there's a little screen recording of all the different options you have in the presets. And you see at the top there, I go through the check-in steps, the information displays, the information changes, and there's advanced settings. I have a wrong header there. It should say information display, not changes at the top. So basically, check-in steps, what is required for check-in? Should you require the bib number? Should you require group bib number? Should you require waiver signing? And so on. So basically, this is a good way if you have, let's say, a triathlon with a relay and a standard individual event, you may want to say that group bib number is required for the triathlon. But for the individual, just standard bib number is required, and you don't want to show the group bib number. Waiver signing may or may not be applicable to you. It would really only be necessary if you had a lot of entries that were done offline, you imported them to RunSignup, and you want to make sure that you get the waiver signing done in the app. You can do that right here. So information display is what data should be displayed about each participant. And so you can see on the right, as I scroll through there, there's a whole lot of information. And this is all dependent on the event that you're working in. So some events, you may have custom question responses you want to display. You might have add-ons you want to display. You might want to display corral information, or you may want to just not show any of this stuff and just show the basics. It's totally up to you, and it's totally customizable. Information updates. This is basically saying to the system, what data should the user of the app be allowed to change? So you might want to allow the app user to transfer events, or you might not want to do that because it's a little dangerous. You might want to say that, okay, the user can update the corral selection, or you may not want to do that. So sometimes you'll have a preset that is more of an admin type preset that allows all of these information changes to be enabled so that an admin on site can, update all of this information. And you may not want to let your volunteers do this. This is why it's really important to understand the flexibility here. You could have a configuration for your volunteers and one for a volunteer admin who has a whole lot more access to make changes, which is very typical on site. So now let's talk about configurations. Again, the configurations are basically the grouping of all of my presets mapped to my events. So I've got a 5K and a 10K and a relay, and each of those I've customized presets for. In the configuration setup, you need to say, okay, I've got 5K, it's going to use my standard run preset. 10K also is going to use my standard run preset. Relay is going to use my relay preset. And then you may or may not want to use some of these other settings. So these other settings are going to be things like, should some events be hidden? Maybe you have a virtual event and you don't want to show all of those participants in the list. So you can hide your virtual for this configuration. In addition, there are some general options. This is just more general usage of the app and how it works. A lot of these settings can also be customized on the device level, particularly to just this device, but it's also in configurations. Basically, you can change what is displayed in the list. So all of the participants, and they're listed out. Do you want to show bib number, age, gender, or status, like checked in or not checked in? You can customize the 3 different columns available to you, so the left, center, and right. So you could say, I want to show bib, or I don't want to show bib, or I want to show age or not. Sometimes it's nice to show age so you can identify the difference between twins or 2 people who are named the same, like a father or son. You want to check in the right person. Exact match lookup basically allows the system or not to automatically load a participant when you type in their name and you have an exact match. Some people like that, some people don't. Lookup result is a new feature that allows you to basically change what happens when you tap a participant or scan a participant. It will zoom in to either the view participant page where you can check them in and see their information, or it can go directly to the update participant info screen. So let's say you had a configuration made for a corral swap, like you have a separate station at your event just for corral changes. You could have a configuration that only has basically, for the information changes, the ability to update corrals. And when you do this and say that my lookup result is set to participant info changes, it will, as soon as you tap someone, bring you to the screen where you can change their corral. That's it. It's a really cool feature if you have this use case. We have had an event that does a donut run. And what they did was they set up a question that marked how many donuts they've eaten out on these stations along the race course. And so they use this feature to say, at these check-in stations on the race course, as soon as I scan someone's bib number, it brings them right to the screen where they can enter in how many donuts they've eaten so far. It's really crazy stuff. And finally, the quick check-in auto confirm. This is if you're using the quick check-in feature on the app, which is basically a way to have a hands-off approach to the check-in. Typically, we'll find this useful for events that are really cold and they're wearing gloves and they don't want to interact with the device manually. So what they do is they make everything on QR codes. They say, I want to scan the participants with their confirmation email, and then I want to scan a bib number and give it to them, and that's it. And this will automatically confirm the check-in after they scan so that it's completely hands-off. All they're doing is just scan reg, scan bib, scan reg, scan bib. That's all they're doing the entire day. And finally, on the configuration, you can enable label printing, which is a new feature for us, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. But basically, you do have to enable this on the configuration that you're using in order for you to print out labels of participants if that's what you want to do. Okay, so I kind of buried the lead a little bit on some of these examples, but I'll go through them again. Let's say for the triathlon relay event participants, you want to show their group team name and you want to assign their group team bib number. However, for the individual triathlon participants, you do not want to show the group team name and you want to assign their individual bib number. In this case, you create 2 presets, one called relay, one called individual, let's say, with the above customizations. And then you would create one configuration that uses the presets I created for those specified events. So I've got my individual triathlons. Let's say I've got like, a sprint, Olympic, and an Ironman distance or whatever. And I've got, let's say 6 events, then you've got 3 per type. So I've got relays for the sprint, Olympic, and Ironman. And I also have individuals for those 3. So I could create 2 presets, 1 configuration, and then basically map each of the individual events to use the individual preset I created, and each of the relays to use the relay preset I created. So this is basically the walkthrough on how to create and set up a preset and configuration in the app. We've made this a little bit easier if all you need to do is make a basic customization. Basically what you do is you come into that settings area and there's a default preset. You can click create preset. That will use the default settings in step 1 here, but you can customize it, enable whatever you need to do. And then once you save it at the top right, at this point, we now give you a prompt that says, would you like to make a configuration with the same name and load the configuration you've created? You can say yes or no. And if you did say yes, it would just create a configuration for you with that preset applied to every single event within your race. That may or may not be what you need to do, but a lot of times you just need to say, oh, I want to enable corrals for everybody right now. And that's what all you need to do. Go in, create a new preset, make the change you need, say save, and then accept that you'll create a new configuration and apply it, and it will load it all for you. If you don't do that, what you need to do is create a new configuration or select an existing one and apply the preset in the dropdown here to all of the events that you want to apply it for. So you might have default applied for every single event in your race, but you want to customize only a handful of them. You would use those dropdowns in the event preset area and set it all up there. And finally, you need to make sure that you select your configuration at the end. So we don't automatically select the configuration except for when you say you want to. So you need to make sure here that you actually select the configuration. And we actually also show the currently selected configuration. If you wanted to make a quick change to it, you can do that there. So this is the basic process for using presets and configurations. So another use case for configurations is that you can use them as a way to switch between different usages of the app. Some examples of these are you might have a configuration that's set up just for emergency contact lookup. So what you could do is set up a preset and a configuration with that preset applied to all events that shows basic info plus emergency contact info. This is really handy if you're an event director and something happens on course and you need to just quickly look up someone's emergency contact info. Well, you can load up your app, switch over to this preset using that change configuration button, and then you'll have immediately the ability to just look at all your participants, but just see the emergency contact info for them so you can quickly handle the situation as fast as possible. As we know, that's all really important if anything bad happens on course. Another one, like I mentioned before, is this quick participant info change. So you could set up a preset and configuration with that preset applied to all events. It uses the update registrant info option for the lookup result configuration setting. This will navigate directly to the screen where you can change things like shirt size, custom question response, corral assignment, etc. So this is for that donut run scenario where they have a custom question that's tracking how many donuts each participant has eaten on the course. And all they want to do is scan their bib number and then say they've eaten 5 donuts now or 7 or however many. So it's a really easy way to make quick participant information changes on the fly. So these are 2 examples of different configurations you might want to set up. Now you'll see as you're going through this, we give you a little prompt telling you that, hey, when I create a preset or a configuration, would I like to sync those or would I like to have a local copy? So what we've done is we've made it since I think a few updates ago so that you can either say all the changes that I'm going to make are going to either apply locally just to my single device here, or they're going to be synced. And by syncing, we mean that it's going to go up to RunSignup, and anybody who's using that same preset or that same configuration will get the changes that I have made. So may or may not be something you want to do, and it may or may not be dangerous. So what you typically would want to do is if you are setting all of your devices up in the office, the days before the packet pickup starts, you want to probably sync all of your changes as you're making them so that any devices who decide to use your configurations will get all of the updates necessary, all the changes that you've made. But if you're a volunteer who's on site and you want to change something really quick, you probably don't want to update other devices and you probably just want to do a local copy. So if you're a coordinator of an event and you're operating the packet pickup with all the check-in stations, hopefully a volunteer won't have to make any changes on the fly. But if they do, you'll want to make sure that they don't update anything that you don't want them to, or other devices that you don't want them to. If just one participant is needing to make some small change for some reason but doesn't want to apply it to everyone else, they could use that local copy option here. Otherwise, probably want to use sync latest. Okay, so now you've got everything set up. You have learned about presets and configurations. You've configured it the way you want so that your different events have the right settings applied in your configurations, and you have each and every configuration you may need for your event. You've got your emergency contact configuration. You've got your volunteer coordinator configuration set up, and so on. So now we want to make it, we make it pretty easy once you have things all set up on the back end for the actual volunteer to use it. We understand that volunteers aren't getting paid, and we want to try and make their life as easy as possible when actually using the app. So we try and make it easier. One of the big things we've done recently is when a volunteer opens the app and loads a race for the first time, if you on the back end have created some configurations, it will show this pop-up and it'll say, hey, the race coordinator has set up some configurations. Would you like to select one, or would you like to just stay with the default? So this means, I've set up as a coordinator volunteer configuration. I've set up a emergency contact info configuration. As a user, they'll be able to select from that list of configurations that were made available to them. So it's important to keep in mind that these configuration names are going to be something that volunteers would see. So you might want to make sure that they are easily understandable if a volunteer were to see them. So you might name them standard check-in, emergency contact info, corral swap station, so on and so forth, so that the volunteer, when they get to this, they'll know what to do. So a lot of times, what I would do is have your little volunteer huddle meeting before pickup starts. Make sure everybody's got their devices ready to roll, give them a quick lesson, say, okay, this is the screen that's going to show up. You're going to click select, and then you all are going to pick standard check-in. You all are going to pick this thing or that thing. So this is just really good to understand how the process looks to a volunteer from the coordinator perspective. So once they have the configuration loaded that they need to use for that day, the usage is pretty straightforward. You basically can type in a participant's name to find them. You can tap their name in the row here to bring up their info, and you can do what you need to do. So depending on what you've done with the participant info updates and the data displays, the screens could look completely different from the ones on the right here. But the main functions are going to be check-in, where you can say, I want to give them a bib number or check them in. And at the bottom, if you have made any data changes available, they would see this update registrant info option. And here, it will give you a big form where you can update any of the info that you've made available to them to update. So you might have made corral assignment, something they can change. You might have made giveaway size, something they've changed. You might make their name something you can change. Whatever you want would be available in that update registrant info button. Note, you can tap the camera icon in the top right there to scan a barcode or a QR code of either the registration ID. Typically, that's in their confirmation email. They'll get like an email from RunSignup when they register for the race, and they'll have it in their inbox, or they'll print it out and bring it sometimes. So you can scan that barcode and just bring up the registration really quick if they have it. Or the bib number. If you have pre-assigned bib numbers, like in the old school manner, which is totally fine. We find that a lot of events like to do pre-assignment for some set of participants. Like they'll do a pre-assigned bibs for the elites or the first 100 people to register or something. So if you do have an event where you are pre-assigning bibs, you could use the bib number to look up participants really quick this way. So if you are doing an event and you want to make check-in really fast, like I said before, one thing you can do is send out a pre-race email with the barcode of their registration ID so that participants will have it easily accessible when they show up on race day, or just tell people to bring along their confirmation emails and it'll help. Any little bit helps. Make sure you train your volunteers so they know that if someone does have a registration confirmation, they can just scan it and it brings it up really quick. They don't got to ask them how to spell their last name anymore. And now is the time when you would use dynamic bib assignment. Again, this is where no bibs are assigned in advance and you want to assign them on the fly here. So all you do is you select their name, click that green button to check them in, and it will walk you through a little wizard where you can assign their bib number, type it in, and you can click save and continue there. And then at the end, it will show you a nice little confirmation screen. It'll show some information like what bib number was assigned, what t-shirt they have, what event they're in, and so on. Now, you can also use the camera to scan to assign bib numbers. So on the right, you'll see here, I have a little demo going through of searching for someone, clicking check-in, using the camera icon to scan, and just checking in scanning a QR code I had on my computer. Now that QR code could be, again, a barcode. It could be on their registration confirmation, or it could be, in their email or something like that. This can be sped up further by using, there's a configuration option or setting to auto show camera on bib assignment. So instead of getting to that screen where it asks you to type in the bib assignment, it'll just automatically load the camera if you plan on making sure that you have QR codes or barcodes printed onto them. So this is, again, where I want to scan the bib numbers. So basically, most bibs can have QR codes or barcodes printed onto them. Typically, you'll see this on the actual pull tag of the bib number itself. What I would say is if you are working with a designer for your bibs, make sure that the bib manufacturer is putting a barcode or a QR code on the bibs with the bib number encoded into it so that you can make your check-in process even more fast. So this is very typical, and if you work with your bib manufacturers, I'm sure they'll be able to do it for you. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about a more advanced feature. We have added the ability to do label printing in RaceDay check-in. So we have a guide on how you can set this up, and basically it uses the native printing on the actual devices themselves to do it. So with iOS, it uses AirPrint, and with Android, it just uses their standard print service. Now we've tested it and made it work very well with the Brother QL810W. We have a blog post on this and how to set it up and everything like that. It is a little bit of an involved process. If you've never set up a printer on a phone before, it's not as easy as it is on a computer. So you do have to work through the troubleshooting of trying to figure out how to connect it to your network and things like that. But once you get through the actual process of setting up the label printer with your phone, it's really easy to set it up in RaceDay check-in. You would basically go to your configuration that you're using, click Open Label Print Settings, and you can customize the layout of your labels. We give you a nice preview here of what data will show and where it will show. We give you the ability to have, we start with 3 rows and 3 columns per row. You can change different things that are on the label. You can put a label next to each data element. So like name, it just shows the name itself, John Doe. If you check that box to the left, label, it will say name, John Doe. So you see there, it says gender M. That one has a label. But basically, you can customize the different sizes of these and so on and so forth. And then when you when you get to the screen on the bottom there, the checked-in confirmation, there'll be a little printer icon. You can tap it and you can select the printer and it will spit out a label for you. So this is a pretty cool feature. And if you do have a Brother QL810W, it works really nicely. They are pretty nice little printers, and you can use one printer with as many devices as you want on site. You do, again, have to set up a little local network. So you probably want to pick up a Wi-Fi router. If you're working with a timer, they might already have this stuff, and they might be able to set up a network for you so you can use this kind of thing if that's what you need. So typically we recommend a label for those events where you're doing dynamic bib assignment and you may have large families picking everything up all at once, and you want to make sure that the right bib goes to the right people. Personally, what I would do in my day was, as I was dynamically checking people in, I would just write in the back of the bib John Doe to make sure that John Doe got this bib. This is a little bit nicer way to do that. In addition, one of the cool things you can do is put the t-shirt size on here. So a lot of times what packet pickups will do is they'll have a station for the bib assignment and a station for the shirt pickup. And so the shirt pickup say, I can't give you your stuff until you got your label. And then once they got the label from the check-in station, they'll be able to pick up the shirt. So that's another thing you could do. So before we go into just open questions and discussion, just some few features and usage that we also have that you could use. You can use this on the menu in the top left. The lock race functionality limits the ability of changing settings for a specific device. So if you are deploying a bunch of different devices for your volunteers and you don't want them to fool around with the presets or configurations or any of the settings like that, you can lock the devices, you can put a pin in and that only you know, and then they won't be able to access or mess anything up. So that's really nice if you are concerned about participants changing something, or sorry, volunteers changing something so they could get more data access or something like that. Quick check-in is, I mentioned briefly, allows you to do a really quick method of scanning everything. You just scan the registration QR code and then the bib number QR code, and that's all you're doing all day. Scan reg, scan bib, scan reg, scan bib. Check-in stats allows you to see the stats by race, event, and device. On the right here, you can see all the different stats in a pie chart. Be pretty good to know if you're a coordinator and you just want to see, okay, how many more participants are going to come up before the actual race starts. We still have 30% of the people not checked in yet. We could potentially get another 20% of the folks show up before the gun goes off. We might get a rush, that kind of thing. The next one is queued edits. So queued edits, typically you won't ever have to mess around with these, but what will happen is if your device goes offline, like you dropped internet connection, you have really bad cell service, we'll display a little bar at the top of the app that'll say, we've lost internet connection. And at that point, if you've lost internet connection, you can keep using the app, no problem. As soon as you get internet access again, all of the changes will be pushed up to RunSignup. Now, if there's a situation where you never end up getting data, again, like something happens to the device where it just blows up and you can't get internet for whatever reason, you can go into the queued edits and you can see all the changes that were made to all the participants, all of the bib changes, the corral changes, so on and so forth. And you can export that, or you can write it down and manually change it. This is basically a way, in case something really bad happens and all of the changes you made on this device never went to RunSignup, they would be stored in the queued edits. So it's basically, it's a queue of edits. It's all of the edits that have not been made yet. So really only needed if something bad happens. Now, what I'll say is if you are a volunteer coordinator or you're working on site and you are managing the devices, managing volunteers who are using the app, it's a good best practice to double check before I usually say that they should just remove the app from their device once you're done to make sure that they don't have any data. Before they remove the app from the device, just check their queued edits, make sure there's nothing in there that's waiting to be synced to RunSignup. It's a really good best practice to ensure all of the data that they made changes to is reflected on RunSignup. The next one is force refresh. Again, this is not really super useful unless something's not working properly. The reason you want to use force refresh is the way that we are able to sync with RunSignup is that certain things automatically get updated. If a new participant registers for the race, they automatically show up in RaceDay as check-in without any interaction needed by you. But if, let's say, you at the last minute decided to add a 1 mile run to the race, you added a whole new event, or you added a whole new corral, or a whole new group type, or some other thing that's not like a participant, it will not know about those new race configuration items. So if something big changes at your race, like a new event or a new corral or a new whatever, like a structural change happens, you'll need to use this force refresh to tell the system to update, because we aren't going to update everything all the time in order to save as much as we can in terms of data usage and things like that. So if something does change, you're not seeing something quite the way it should be, you can use force refresh, and that'll just say, okay, I'm going to go to RunSignup and get all of the structure for this race again because something has changed. So this is a really good troubleshooting step to use if you need to. Volunteer check-in, I talked about that a little bit. You can switch modes, get support if you do need assistance with a race. Basically, you can just use this, and it just sends an email to info@runsignup.com, filled out with your information. It's basically just automatically pre-fills an email body for you with the information about the app, what version you're running, and it's just an easy, quick way to send an email. And back to races, pretty straightforward. It just allows you to get back to the list of the races on your device. So what we'll do is I have some useful links here, and we'll send out this slide deck after the case. You can check it out. Some more information on how to set up label printing, how to run a successful packet pickup using CheckIn app and dynamic bib assignment was a really nice webinar we did back in June. The most recent update is a blog post on RunSignup. Do follow the blog if you don't already. We will always put out a blog post with each and every single update we make to the CheckIn app, telling you exactly what we made changes to. So in the most recent one, we added multi-race bundles, which is a really cool feature. If your race uses multi-race bundles, it'll show in the app now automatically, hey, this participant was registered in the 10-race series multi-race bundle. And a few other things here. And again, these are just some of the more recent updates that we have made. And you can check these out on RunSignup if you wanted to go through the details of each of them, but they're here for you if you need them. All right, so we got about 10 minutes. Were there any questions that we needed to bring up, Chris?
I think everything's been answered.
Cool. Well, if you do have any questions before we head out for the day, we'd be happy to answer them for you. And if not, you can always feel free to email myself, Avery@runsignup.com, or Crisp, CRISP, @runsignup.com. And we'll be able to assist you with your specific questions about how to use this app most effectively for your events. Let's see here. Someone's asking about label printing. Do all devices need to be on the same local network, or do you link each device with a printer? You can set it up both ways, actually. The brother printers allow you to directly connect a single device to a single printer. They also allow you to set up a device to a network, and then each of your devices will connect to the network. It's all about how it's set up on the actual devices you have and what they're capable of doing. It basically just looks to the device like a regular old printer. Some printers you connect directly to, other ones you connect to a network and then through that. Someone's saying that the predictive input sometimes will pop in the first number before you finish typing the whole number. Derek, there's a new setting that allows you to define how long it should wait before automatically loading a participant. And that's in the configuration. It will say, I'm trying to remember exactly what it's called, but it's like a timeout. It says, how long should I wait until I automatically look up a participant? And you can actually turn that off completely if you don't like how it automatically loads in someone. All right, looks like we've gotten all the questions that we need to get to. Some really, really great conversations today and great questions. We love hearing about all the different use cases you have for using the apps, so feel free to reach out if you have any suggestions or questions on how to set something up a certain way. We'd be more than happy to assist you. Thanks again for coming. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.